Found my secret spot on Wave Watch.
Well, some more action there. We got some fun topic to talk about now, surf music. And the guy sitting next to me, of course, was one of those people that was responsible for all that groovy music in the early 60s. Randy, what was surf music? I mean, what was different about surf music to any other genre at that time?
Well, for the sound, we introduced the Fender electric bass, which changed the sound of rock and roll music. If you want something in the 50s, use a stand-up bass. If you want something in the 60s, use the Fender electric bass. Another thing was that it was instrumental because it was used for shows where the filmmaker like John Severson or Greg Knoll or Walt Phillips would talk over the music while they were showing footage, because all of the movies were a live vocal thing. Third, it was danceable, because you'd spend your day at the beach and then you'd go off to school auditorium, or right here in Hermosa, the Hermosa Biltmore, we threw dances with the Beach Boys, and fan club would charge $1 to get in, and you'd play, and they'd sell, you know, soda, and afterwards you'd divide up the money, $1 for you, $1 for you, $1 for you, and at the end of the night you'd have your pockets full of $1 bills, and you think, man, am I going to buy an amplifier or a Woody? What am I going to do? I'm rich.
You know, I've read up as much as I possibly could to interview somebody that was so much part of it, but I read somewhere Dick Dale said he was trying to create what he heard when he rode waves or he was in the ocean. Was that part of surf music, or was it the Beach Boys and harmonies? Which thing was real surf music, you know?
Well, I think Dick Dale's had a lot of time to think about it and to sort of place himself into the movement and maybe glorify it a little bit, I would say. He pretty much wasn't a surfer, and he was a musician, and he played, and he was kind of a greasy guy, but, you know, they had great music. It was a great band, and we'd come from the South Bay and go down and hear his music, and kids from down in the Newport area or Balboa would come up and hear ours. And the Beach Boys were kind of an inland group that idolized the Four Freshmen, the pop version of the barbershop quartet, and when they got around, they didn't really surf. The only one that tried was the drummer, Dennis, and he'd come out and, oh, I saw him surf here. He'd take off and curl all the time, you know, and he'd get, you know, come in all tired and, oh, I really did it, you know. And he was kind of, and there was still that war between the surfers and the guys who related to cars, the ho-dads or the greasers. And when he got his money, he bought Corvettes. He didn't buy a Woody or a board or a surf-related stuff. So there was that, and when the Beach Boys wrote, they wrote about the culture that was around them. Didn't mean that they were creating the culture or Dick Dale was creating the culture. They were just, it was so big that everybody would, you couldn't help but write about it.
Randy, you know, you were talking about that there were instruments that changed the music as we know it in rock and roll, and the instruments, the Fender bass and the Stratocaster guitar. But was surf music more instrumental or was it more vocal?
Real surf music was instrumental. The vocal music was like for other people that would tell the story if you didn't understand the story. I think a lot of us couldn't really sing very well, and we weren't really great musicians. It just happened that we were a part of this culture and this is what we were doing, and the best we could do was play our instruments. And it was and if you listen to Pipeline, you hear the sound of that great tube crashing down. If you listen to Wipeout, you can see the guys just getting totaled and just wiped out. But if you think of In My Room or Little Surfer Girl, they're like little stories for people that don't understand the culture and want to know about it. They're wonderful songs. Beach Boys were great, and I loved listening to all that stuff. But that wouldn't be considered surf music. It oftentimes had a real drive or a mystique or a power or something that imitated what you felt in the water, the majesty of it or the energy of it, and it was instrumental.
It was surf music, it was party music though, right? I mean, you're saying, you know, you'd been to the beach all day, you were sunburnt and salty, and then you went to, where did you go? I mean, did they have nightclubs back then? I mean, or what did you go to do to see you and the Challengers?
Well, they didn't really have much in the way of nightclubs because most of us were underage. So if you lived in the South Bay and you were adventurous and you were on a safari for the weekend in somebody's 49 Ford or 46 Woody, you maybe would head down to the Rendezvous, which was for all of us kind of a magical experience. You'd come from 2 blocks away, you could hear the stomp going on. Then you'd go in and hear all these great girls from Tustin and the South and guys and a whole different kind of atmosphere and feel.
But there were a lot of bands, you know, like the Lively Ones and all these little, the Pyramids and all these little bands. What was, I mean, they all cut one record, what, pressed 500 copies and it was like a local hit? Or?
Well, the culture was going on, and we were the Challengers were the first group to do an album of surf music, and it was such a phenomenal hit. It went through the
Surf Beat, right?
Surf Beat, right. It was in all of the stores, sold hundreds of thousands of copies immediately. And so all the other record company guys were going, hey, well, maybe we should do this too. And so they signed up all these other groups, and maybe the group only had 10 or 12 original songs, and that's all they had. And maybe the records didn't sell that well. It was hard to make a record that would sell nationally.
Does Randy still play surf music?
Yeah, I still play surf music. You know, with Herman, the drummer, and the Scorpions. Scorpions are on tour now. They have a lot of fun. He and I redid Wipeout, and of course we do stuff for the show.
Do you ever listen to your old albums? I mean, when you listen to one of your Challengers albums today, what do you think?
Well, you figure from 1960 to 1966, we recorded 28 albums, so figure even 10 songs an album, but they're usually 12 or 14. That's 280 songs, and they were from the early instrumentals to themes from Secret Agent, the original we did, and Man from U.N.C.L.E. You had movie themes. We did all kinds of stuff, so it would be hard to really... I like the old stuff. I like Surf Beat. I like do the classic tunes. I know Mr. Moto. I can play all the parts.
Eliminate the Challengers from it. If you were to take one band from that period, which was Randy's favorite surf music band?
Well, I really loved the sound of the Shadows. They were from England. They weren't a surf band, but they did that kind of instrumental music, but it was super high quality, interesting sounds, thoughtfully produced.
Do you still love to pick up the bass and play? I mean, if you pick up your bass, which one's the first one you want to play?
I play Mr. Moto. Mr. Moto, Agent Orange does that one now. That's a great tune. It's basically a steal from a riff in a song called Hot Rod Lincoln. Surf music, I love it. I love playing these guitars. I love Wave Watch. I love being on it. It's a musical show.